What's up, family? And welcome to Real Talk Tuesdays with Jess. I'm Jess, and I hope you're all having a great day today. Today, I started my greeting with What's up, family, because coincidentally, that is what we're going to be talking about today family. And it's one of those things that everyone kind of has experience with it, but it's also a very, very personal issue, and I guess I wanted to share some of my personal experience with it and teach you how to um, deal with any familial issues, because a lot of times people, when Mother's Day comes around, Father's Day, Christmas, it's very family orientated. Everyone's posting pictures of them and everything seems peachy, but underneath the surface, there's usually, more often than not, a lot more complicated issues going on. Usually, family is tied to complications, and I wanted to elaborate on that. So, when it comes to family, I think it's important to define what that actually means. For me, family is a support group. Support meaning emotional support, more often than not, financial support, physical support, and I guess that would be the ideal. But that doesn't always happen, and that's okay. For me personally, I was, in my upbringing, I was emotionally neglected and physically abused. That's my baggage that I will put out there, and I don't usually just come out and say that so lightly, but it's Real Talks Tuesdays. It's going down. We're keeping it raw, keeping it real. I have a scar on my belly button that is a result of, um, what is it called? A hernia. So I got a hernia when I was younger, which is basically the physical manifestation of mental and emotional stress as a child. My insides were literally coming out, and when I cried, it was like a hole in my belly opening up. And usually, when you're younger, that is a result of not being held enough, not really um, getting that physical and emotional affection that we need so much when we're children. And humans are actually very interesting because on the, I think it's Maslow's scale, hierarchy of needs, human needs, um, acceptance is actually, now that more research is being done on it, is actually a lot more pivotal, because as humans, we are separated from the animal kingdom by the need of emotional nurturing. So animals, when they're born in the wild, in the forest or whatever, they don't they aren't brought into the world crying out, because that would be um, detrimental to their survival, because there's predators and all the things like that. But with humans, when we're born crying. It's a sign that we're alive, and it's a sign that we need to be emotionally and physically nurtured. And not everybody gets that, and it manifests itself later in life with our mental beliefs about ourselves, which I'll get to later. And if you're like me and you were brought up in a family, my family was very religious, so very conservative, very obedience. They very valued obedience, and the child is kind of seen but not heard. So in an environment like that, you can grow up thinking that your voice doesn't matter and that you are an extension of your parents, your main caregivers, anything like that, when in fact the child is their own individual. And that is really something that I have come to be very passionate about, and individuality and valuing yourself, self-worth. And in a family where you don't feel like your voice is heard, like, for instance, if your family is very set on the roles of what a family should be like. There's the authority, there's the parental caregiver figure, and then the children are just seen as like an extension of them. And they aren't valued as much because their voice is stemming from a place of lesser experience and all those sorts of things. So what I really wanted to do with this video is just share my personal experience and also share some tips for those who are like me and have a complicated and conflictual relationship with their family. I have been estranged from my family for about 3 months now. I haven't seen them for 3 months. I haven't received any financial support from them in like 3 months or more. And it's a challenge because it really challenges your idea of yourself and your idea of your self-worth. Because another secondary definition of what I feel family is a foundation for your self-worth. There was a recent experiment done where mothers were facing their infant children, and they were reacting to their child and mirroring their child, which is very important to give them a sense of agency and their own sense of worth, that they belonged, that they could relate to another human being. And that's very important for a child. And then for 2 minutes, the mother would not react at all to the infant. We're very straight-faced, and the child actually lost control of their posture. They were very distressed, and it was almost very disturbing to watch, because when that sort of experience kind of comes into our lives at a very young age, we don't really understand what it is that is causing the communication error, really. We don't see ourselves in the parental caregivers, and we don't, it really affects our image of ourselves and how we come to feel comfortable, really, with ourselves and feel a certain belonging. And that is where self-worth really comes in. So on top of that, I came from a family which was also very big on corporal punishment, which means that I got spanked a lot, pretty much. But it was my dad who was doing the spanking, and looking back now, it was a traumatic event, and a lot of psychologists have named it a source of abuse. I guess it is, depending on cultural, and I'm really not doing this video to lay blame on anyone, even my parents or anything. I just want to shed light, really, on these experiences that we have that can really affect us later in life. So corporal punishment, spanking, physical abuse, whatever you want to call it, when a child doesn't feel safe in their home or in their biological family, it can cause a lot of triggers, a lot of anxiety, where basically the amygdala in your brain, which produces the fight or flight response, is overactive because you're always in a state of fight or flight, or always feeling that the next attack, I guess, for lack of a better word, may come on. So those are just two of the ways that a family can, per se, fail to really nurture the individual self, fail to really recognize the worth of a child. So I just wanted to offer that as my experience and show what has worked for me, to be able to move past that and to really count on myself for um, self-love. And I always say that it's always possible to treat yourself better than you have been treated in the past. And that the quote that says that blood is thicker than water, that's not even the whole quote. Like, the whole quote is really about the war and how the blood of battle is thicker than the water of the womb or something like that, which really doesn't refer to family at all. It really talks about how bonds and connections that we make in certain circumstances can definitely surpass the genetic bonds of DNA or whatever. A lot of people, I think, don't actually relate to their family's beliefs and things like that in a certain level. I definitely don't. From a young age, I think I really tried to separate myself from um, organized religion, and that has had really no negative, has really not impacted me in the sense that I have a negative belief or interpretation of organized religion. It's just I don't I don't agree with the exclusivity of it. So unconditional love that is taught in the Bible and in organized religion, I totally believe in. But when it starts, um, I guess, talking down LGBTQ and different people's rights, I think it is the time really to come back to the individual and really valuing individual experience and taking it from there and not generalizing so much so that your heart is closed to what a person that is you know, pretty much we're all equal, so that a person's experience is objectified and isn't taken as seriously. So on that note, I just wanted to share the things that have helped me. And I think the number one thing that has really helped me is just realizing that you can treat yourself better than you have been treated in the past. And when it comes to family, I really think that that relates to surrounding yourself with a community, whether that be a church community if you are religious, or joining a club or something like that, or just finding friends that you feel like you can relate to and that you feel that they do really value your voice. I think that that is super healing for your self-worth. And if there are no people in your life right now, I know how tough that can be. I know that you can feel like a burden, but that brings me to my second point, which is you are not a burden. And I know growing up in families where it wasn't always okay to really address your needs for fear of feeling like a burden, that that can be a tough pill to swallow. But finding those people who will be there for you in times of trouble and not judge you for whatever reaction you have to your circumstances, sorry, is one of the most healing things. Honestly, that is number one. And since we're social creatures, everybody really needs somebody. And it's unfortunate that not everybody has that strong foundation of support from the very beginning, but it does happen, and it does happen a lot more than people realize, which is why it's important to start talking about it more and really unveiling our pain. And secondly, the second tip I would say is to just really delve into self-love. And I know that in recent years, while self-love has really been making an appearance in mainstream media and all those things, that some people have really associated it with selfishness. I've been called selfish. I've been called selfish for taking a sick day and things like that. And when you really think about it, that is really going against our health, because we are humans. We do go through all sorts of things that nobody can really tell from the surface, and nobody knows you like yourself. So I really preach that you kind of only have to do what is best for your mental health. And I really think that that is what is the embodiment of self-love. And it doesn't have to look the same from one person to the next at all. Like, self-love could just be, to one person, it could be working out every day, getting rid of all that emotional baggage, getting those like endorphins to make you feel better. And actually, there is research suggesting that exercise alone can eradicate depression, which is really phenomenal. But for another person, self love could just mean taking a day off and really focusing on what it is that they want to do. And that is totally fine as well, as long as it is nurturing to your soul, the essence of who you really are. Then I think that is really what self-love is. And it's important to define that for yourself. And there are tons of suggestions out there: reading books, drinking tea, doing yoga, going for walks. And as long as you can find one or two things that really works for you, I think that that can really help to reverse the effects of the low self-esteem and the unacceptance that has stemmed from our past. And thirdly, I feel like it is very important to really just get to know who you are. Because if you don't know who you are, if you're not in touch with your feelings, then it's so easy to go down any path and I guess even just be desperate for that belonging and that acceptance that we were deprived of in our earlier past. So getting to know yourself, I think for me, meditation has really helped to introduce me to that inner world. Also just mindfulness, which is basically just getting in touch with your senses, brings you back to the present moment. So your mind isn't focusing on past traumas or what has happened in the past or negative emotions that have come about from negative experiences in the past, and just realizing that those aren't happening right now. When you really zone in on the present and are present, it really means just getting in touch with your senses. So we have these senses for a reason. They are tools to really anchor us into this moment, which is really all that we have and the greatest tool in our lives. So if you were to just be going about your daily life honestly, you can do mindfulness meditation anywhere, which is what I love about it. You just ask yourself the questions of, what am I seeing right now? What am I smelling? What am I feeling? Tactile, like what am I touching? And what am I tasting? Those types of things. And it really helps to just anchor you into this present moment. And the fourth thing, is it the fourth? I'm not really counting, is to spend your time in a way that is also nurturing. For a lot of us who have a background that has conflictual experiences with family, complicated relationships, low self-esteem, struggling with that sort of thing, I think to just spend time doing what you feel you're good at. It doesn't have to be artistic. It could be a lot of artists, I guess, kind of struggle with this because we're very sensitive people. I really like to write or play the ukulele or paint or any of those things, but it doesn't have to be that at all. Spending time doing just what makes you feel good about yourself. It could be doing research or playing basketball, doing sports, or even just calling a friend and talking to them. And by doing this, we are nurturing the soul and nurturing ourselves as individuals, which I feel is what may have caused a lot of the negative emotions that are affiliated with negative experiences from our upbringing, which I feel like more of us have than don't, right? Nobody really has a perfect life. We all have a past. So it's really good to just acknowledge that these things have happened, but they're not happening right now. And what can you do right now to feel better about yourself so that you can share with the world your talents and your gifts and contribute in a meaningful way, because we all have something to give to the world. And that is one of the most healing things, to be appreciated, I guess, but also just to appreciate that in yourself, that you do have something to share, and whether it is your voice or musical talents or academic skills, that you are contributing. A lot of people do volunteer work to feel better, and that is amazing. And if that is what helps you feel like your day has been well spent, then that is great. But I also want to reiterate, I think, point number 3 or number 2, sorry, that sometimes self care looks like doing nothing at all. Sometimes it does look like spending a day in bed and not feeling bad about it. So I think also what is really important is to recognize our feelings with what we're doing. A lot of people have a lot of guilt if they spend more time in bed or take a sick day, then they feel guilty, like they're not doing enough, that they're not contributing. And that stems from our low self-worth, and doing things that make you feel better once you have gotten in touch with your emotions and even why is really important, just to recognize what you're feeling and then really try and dig deeper into why you're feeling that way and what it might be, what your emotions might be trying to tell you, is a very educational and very uplifting experience, because you're really getting to know yourself. And it's almost like spending time with a friend when you make that time for yourself to just do whatever feels good. It's like, on the one hand, you can have a small talk conversation with yourself, just being like, oh, what are you doing and what did you eat and whatever. But once it gets deeper into how are you feeling, why are you feeling this way, getting really interested in yourself and what it is that maybe triggers you, what it is that makes you feel lighter, makes you feel really good, it makes you have a better relationship with yourself, which is really important. And number 5, I think, is can maybe sound contradictory to what I said earlier about religion, but I think that in my journey I have evolved into, I guess, more of a spiritual path. But anyways, it is having a relationship not only with yourself, but with your creator and whatever name you may call that by. If you're an atheist, then I would say to focus more on the individual self, how you are feeling. But if you're agnostic, or if you come from a religious background and you're open to a relationship to, honestly, the great I am, whatever name you want to call it, a God, the universe, Allah, it can act as another caregiver. They say that you become the parent that the way that you parent is almost the same way as the God that you believe in. So God, the Father, coming from a Roman Catholic background, that's what they always called the big, the big man or woman upstairs, honestly. And to have a relationship with that being, whatever name you call it, can be also very healing for someone who comes from a background where the physical parental caregivers were not that embodiment of unconditional love that we all strive for. So by having that relationship through prayer, which is more listening really than talking, to just be present and trust your intuition, which is heavenly guidance, let's say. There is a voice inside of yourself that already knows what you want to become, and that voice comes from the place where we all come from, really, and that is just life and love itself. So by tapping into that, by tapping into, let's say, a supernatural presence, or just the all-encompassing presence of life itself and God and love, then we can be able to tap into that energy of that we are loved just as we are ourselves, that we were created in the image of something that is like that um, that is perfect in its love, their love, her love, this being, and that loves us unconditionally in a way that perhaps humanity has not evolved yet to really be able to provide for each other. And when we tap into this big picture being, it becomes more apparent to us the role that we play. A lot of times in families, there's something called the scapegoat, which is related to this idea of that everyone has a specific role within a family, and the scapegoat is kind of the victim of the negative belief systems of the rest of the family. The negative beliefs of the family, usually about themselves, is projected onto a person, perhaps. And um, I felt that, I can say. And I think that it's very important to realize that it's not your fault, that if you come from a troubled past forever, or whatever, that it's not your fault, that things are the way they are, however they are. If things aren't great, then just trust that you have done everything you can for yourself, for your mental health, for your nurturing, and that it's not selfish to really want the best for yourself and really want better for yourself than what you have been exposed to in the past. Because that's how we break cycles. I always say that being a parent is a great responsibility, but if you don't really understand that responsibility, it's kind of easy to fall into a trap of not seeing it for what it is, which is creation. And for those of us who've gone through a lot of pain in the past, I think it's natural to want to break that cycle and not want to do the same to our children or our friends or our family of choice. And I just want to end by saying that we do get to choose. I get to choose. Choice is the greatest tool that we have in our inventory. By making a decision, we can change the future. And by deciding who we want to surround ourselves, and by deciding that those people do not have to be a reflection of the people who have hurt us in the past or anything like that, by surrounding ourselves with people who appreciate us, and by being people who appreciate ourselves, that we are breaking the cycle of whatever past trauma or abuse that we've been through, and it doesn't have to continue. And in that way, in our own small contribution, we can change the world. And there is something very liberating and very hopeful about that. So I thank you so much for watching this video. If you heard something that you like, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. And I will see you in the next video. I love you all, and you're not alone. We all have a past, and it is our great journey to take what we've been given and make something out of it. And I fully trust that we're all capable of making something good and loving and nurturing, most importantly. So thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate it. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.